is shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine upon us. Set us free by the truth you now bring us. Shine on me. Shine on me. Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Good morning and welcome to Let the Bible Speak. My name is Alex Meredith. I'm the minister at the Marquette Church of Christ here in the Central UP. Thank you so much for joining me on the program today. Today we are continuing the series we've been going through for the last several weeks now called The Questions of Jesus. What we're doing in this series is we're looking at, as we read through the Gospels, Jesus asks a whole lot of questions. We typically think of Jesus as the one with all the answers, and, well, he is, but he also asks a whole lot of questions over the course of his ministry. And what you find, if you really look closely at these, is that a lot of these questions are questions that are really there to make his listeners think critically about some really important issues. Now, the question that we're going to be looking at today, I think, is really important and so incredibly important for the church today. I think it's an important question for our society today. Our question comes from Matthew chapter 7, verse 3, and this is in the midst of what's known as the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is this didactic section from Matthew chapter 5 through Matthew chapter 7, where Jesus is speaking the entire time, and he asks this question in the middle of it that I think has some pretty serious implications. So he asks the question, Matthew 7:3, why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Let me repeat that. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Now, simply put, this is an analogy about pointing to the sins of other people, but ignoring your own sin, right? You're very willing and eager to say, you've got this problem and that problem, but you don't see that maybe you're dealing with even the same exact thing, and you're kind of blind to it, right? Now, what Jesus is doing in asking this question in the first place is he's addressing and confronting the hypocrisy that had become rampant within Judaism during this period. So, for example, in Matthew chapter 23, this is later on in Matthew's gospel, starting in verse 13, Jesus actually addresses this issue, and this is what he says. And he's talking here, by the way, to the leaders of the Jewish community, the religious leaders of the Jewish community. He says, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves, nor allow those who would enter to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves." That's quite the statement. A few things to talk about here. First of all, when he's talking about a proselyte, what he's talking about is a Jewish convert. So, you have this sort of evangelism that's happening within Judaism. It wasn't super common back then, but you did have this where people would convert to Judaism. And when they did, you would typically have a teacher, somebody who would train you in what it looked like and how to live as a faithful Jew. And so, you could just imagine these religious leaders going, traveling to distant places, going on what we might consider missionary trips, and they would go and they would get somebody interested, and they would convert. right? But then, they kind of assumed, well, the work here is done. I can go on with my regular business. The hard part is over with. And they didn't really cultivate a sense of what it meant and what it looked like to be a faithful person. In fact, it seemed like quite the opposite. Not only did they ignore their responsibility to cultivate discipleship in the person, but it seemed like they were leading them down some pretty immoral pathways, right? So you had this hypocrisy that was present even within the religious leadership in first century Judaism. Now, when we talk about hypocrisy, what are we talking about? Well, I think a lot of us have some basic understanding of what hypocrisy is. More or less, it's not practicing what you preach, right? The actual word hypokritos is Greek. It's a lack of judgment. And what it refers to is a lack of judgment for yourself. You're eager to judge other people, but you don't have the same kind of self-reflection when it comes to your own behavior. So here's the problem of hypocrisy that Jesus is addressing. Now, later on in the life of Paul, one of the apostles, Paul has several letters in the New Testament that he writes. One of them is Romans, the book of Romans, which is a letter to the Roman church. And in Romans chapter 2, Paul addresses this same issue of hypocrisy. This is what he says in Romans chapter 2, starting in verse 17. But if you call yourself a Jew and rely on the law, and boast in God, and know His will, and approve what is excellent, because you are instructed from the law, and if you are sure that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness. You can just hear the sarcasm ramping up in his voice, right? A light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of children, having in the law the embodiment of knowledge and truth. You then who teach others, do you not teach yourself? While you preach against stealing, do you steal? You who say that one must not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who boast in the law, dishonor God by breaking the law. For as it is written, the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. So this whole passage, what Jesus said and what Paul says here in Romans 2 is an indictment against Israel, particularly its leaders, right? They're so focused on other people's sin, on other people's righteousness, that they become blind to their own moral shortcomings. Now, the result of this is pretty evident. It's pretty clear. Judaism, because of the hypocrisy that was present in its leadership ranks, Judaism had lost all respect and credibility, not just within Judaism, but even particularly with the outside world. Right? In verse 24, here in Romans chapter 2, Paul likens the embarrassment of Judaism because of the hypocrisy to Israel during the exilic period, when the Babylonians had conquered the Israelites and had taken them over back to their homeland. The Babylonians were doing things like saying, what kind of God do you serve if we can conquer you? Obviously, the God of the Babylonians is superior to the God of the Jews. And so he compares what happened during the exilic period to what's happening here in the first century due to the hypocrisy in the ranks of Judaism. And I think there's a warning to the church embedded in this. If the church and its leaders are going to be prone to accusations of hypocrisy and found that that's actually the case, what kind of credibility does the church have anymore, particularly with the outside world, if even the leaders are not practicing what they preach? There's a temptation, there really is a temptation for, and not just the leaders, but with all Christians today, to live out this sort of, you might call it vicarious Christianity. And what I mean by that is that, there are different ways to live life as a Christian. One is to be a disciple, to be as faithful as you can be, and for the measure of your success as a Christian to be measured by how well you adhere to those principles. Now, there are some discussions to be had about, well, yes, we're saved by grace through faith, not by works. But I think you get my point. The other way to live is to say, you know what, my measure, the measure of success as a Christian is determined by how well I can make other people live good moral lives. How well can I force other people to obey my moral dictates? You know, and somebody's sense of success as a Christian is then measured by somebody else's faithfulness rather than their own. And there's little to no thought in that process given to personal transformation. Now, I want to take a second here because I think this is really important to the conversation. I want to take a second to investigate what the Bible actually says when it comes to evaluating the righteousness of other people. Because I think this is really important when we're talking about a society that wants to privatize all aspects of religion. You know, the temptation is just to say, you go and live in your corner and I'll kind of go off and live in my corner and just leave me alone. And as long as you do that, we're going to be okay. Well, not only has this pervaded general society, I think this attitude is present even within the church. There's this temptation to just say, you know, I'm a Christian and you're a Christian, but let's just do it kind of on our own terms. Well, is that what Scripture teaches? One of the things that I think Scripture does say is that, you know, we do actually have an obligation to address the sin of those around us, particularly the sin of other people who are trying to pursue Christ. So we're not just talking about, you know, Christians and atheists here. We're talking about Christians dealing with other Christians. We have an obligation to address and deal with the sins of those around us. So a few passages to go to here. Starting off in Luke chapter 17, verse 3. And we're just going to go to a few. None of these are particularly long, but I want to read these to you. Luke chapter 17, verse 3 starts off with, if your brother sins, rebuke him. Simple, right? Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, at the beginning of the verse. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 20. As for those who persist in sin, and Paul is particularly talking about those within the church, as for those who persist in sin, rebuke them in the presence of all. James chapter 5, I know James, abbreviated JS, is a little weird, but that's a standard abbreviation. But that's the book of James at the end of the New Testament. James chapter 5, verse 19. My brothers, if anyone among you wanders from the truth, and someone brings him back, let him know that whoever brings back a sinner from his wrongdoing will save his soul from death, implying that there is a place to bring back a sinner from wrongdoing, right? In other words, we do have an obligation to deal with the speck in the brother's eye. But if we're really looking at what the Bible says about all of this, that reality is accompanied with a couple of warnings. Here's the first warning. The first warning is make sure that in helping other people, don't neglect your own spiritual health. Mark chapter 2, I think, has a very good example of this. So, Mark chapter 2, we're going to start reading in verse 14. This is a scene regarding Jesus towards the beginning of his ministry. So, let's start reading here. Mark 2:14. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, Follow me. And he rose and followed him. And as he reclined at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, Why does he eat with sinners and tax collectors? And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. Now, there's sort of a strange irony here. It's kind of funny in the first place that there is this partitioning in the text between, on one hand, you have the Pharisees and the scribes who are very righteous and holy, right? And then you have the quote-unquote sinners and tax collectors. And the way that the text is drawn out might lead you to believe that these are entirely disparate, separate groups of people, and that they have nothing in common. But really, more than anything, that was really just a perception. He says at the end, I didn't come to heal those who were healthy. I came to heal the sick. The reality is, the Pharisees and the scribes, these religious leaders, they were just as sick as everyone else. They just didn't know it, right? They were just as in need of healing as anybody else, but they weren't willing to admit it. You could more precisely say that Jesus came to heal those who recognize that they're sick, who recognize that they need help, right? And the Pharisees, they needed that healing. They needed that salvation, but they didn't realize it. They didn't notice it, right? They just assumed they were in the in crowd already. Now, here's the result of this. The result of religious hypocrisy, particularly when it comes to the leaders, is that the leaders in that hypocrisy get this sense of unjustified, moral, spiritual superiority. I'm better than you, right? And when that happens, people see right through it. It's not as if hypocrisy is all that hard to spot, particularly if you spend much of any time around these people, right? If you really see who they are, people see right through the hypocrisy of the religious leaders, and when that happens, they're not really challenged because the leaders then lose all credibility. Their words have no weight to them anymore. And furthermore, the people have no real role models to actually look up to. And that's how you pretty quickly get a society which is totally morally broken. Maybe that's why sin, your own sin is described as a log and the other person's sin is described as a speck. I've wondered because, somebody else's sin, that's a problem. I'm not going to deny that. That's a problem and it needs to be dealt with. But in some way, that really just affects that person and something that they need to deal with. But when you're talking about your own sin that you're ignoring, not only is that a tragedy for you, that's a tragedy for everybody else around you that you think you're helping. Because you think you're helping, but you're not. It's the blind leading the blind, right? And that's the real catastrophe. The Bible's second warning in this is that, be careful because you're going to be held to the same standard you hold other people to. So in Matthew chapter 7, verse 2, this is actually the verse right before the speck and log passage. Matthew chapter 7, verse 2 reads like this: "For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." There's an old saying, when you point your finger, there are three fingers pointing back at you, right? When you point your finger, there are three fingers pointing back at you. So, make sure to practice what you preach. Because if you don't, if you live hypocritically, this is what's going to happen. First of all, you're going to be condemning yourself. And that's sort of a funny thing to do, isn't it? You're out there warning other people about how dangerous this lifestyle is. You're warning them how God's wrath is going to come upon you. But if you're out there doing the same things you're telling people not to do, you're acknowledging the danger of your own actions, but not doing anything to correct it, which really seems just about the best definition of foolishness that I've ever heard. Here's the second thing that's going to happen if you live hypocritically. Your words aren't going to have any weight to them anymore. you're not going to be a credible source of information. You're not going to be a credible source of, as a role model. You're not going to be a credible source of moral guidance. You're going to lose that credibility. People are going to be able to see through the hypocrisy, and they're not going to trust you. And here's the third thing that's going to happen. You won't really be able to help anybody. Not only because you're not going to be a trustworthy source, you're not going to be able to help anybody because you can't lead somebody out of a storm that you've not figured out how to navigate out of yet. So think about this example. You have somebody who's telling you, you really shouldn't be committing adultery. Adultery is bad. You should be faithful to your wife. Yes, you should. Absolutely. You should be faithful to your wife. Hold the marriage bed in honor among you. That is a good, virtuous thing. But it tends to be the case that if people are really looking for moral guidance and they're ready to accept moral guidance, they probably already know that what they're doing is wrong. What they probably want at that point is actually help getting out of it. I know that it's wrong, but how in the world do I stop? I don't know how to stop. And if the person trying to lead this guy out of the sin of adultery, if he himself is struggling with adultery himself, well, what does he know, right? He clearly knows that it's wrong too and doesn't know how to get out of this mess. So why in the world would he be able to help him? So, that's really the tragedy of hypocrisy, is that you're not really able to help anybody. What happens, if we were to take this analogy farther and maybe quite literally to, maybe it sounds a little silly, but let's say you've got a log in your own eye. And let's say you're leaning forward to try to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Let's say you got a pair of tweezers. Don't do this at home, kids. I don't know how you'd actually do this. Medically speaking, this is not medical advice. But if you were to try to take out the speck out of your brother's eye and you have a log sticking out of your own, what's going to happen? You're going to smash that log into the other person's face. When you're trying to help, you're actually going to be hurting them. And I think metaphorically speaking, that tends to be true. If you have a log in your own eye and you're not dealing with it first, you're not actually going to be able to help the person you're trying to help, particularly with issues that you have not overcome yourself. So we go back to this question. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? What this really is an invitation for us to look critically at ourselves, to evaluate what are the logs in my own life. If I really am serious about helping other people, if you're actually serious about trying to help the people around you, especially regarding moral issues, and you want to help people get out of these entanglements of sin, which is a thing that needs to be done. If you really want to help people do that, you have to figure out how to deal with the log in your own eye first. Now, there comes a point when you can say, I've not perfectly dealt with this. I've not perfectly overcome every temptation known to man, and I'm certainly not perfect at this, but I've dealt with this enough that I've overcome the bulk of the issue. I've overcome the bulk of the problem, and I think I'm in a place when I can adequately help guide people out of this as well. Right? You want to get the speck out of your brother's eye? Great. Figure out how to get the log out of your own eye first. I want to thank you for your time and attention today. We actually have a rare opportunity here. Typically, when I come on with these lessons, I end up very much pressed for time, and I end up trying to rush everything here at the end. If you're interested, I'd like to invite you to stick around for a few minutes towards the close of this program. I want to tell you about some of the things that we offer to you all, some of the resources that we offer you, and then extend an invitation to everyone here. So let me start by telling you about our Bible correspondence course. This Bible correspondence course is a 7-part workbook program that's published by the World Bible School. And what it is you'll let us know that you'd like to participate. We will send you the first workbook, and when you do that, when we send that to you, it'll guide you through a study over various topics and take you to different passages. And as you complete that, you'll send that back to us. When you send it back to us, what we're going to do is we're going to give you some feedback on that, and then we're going to send you the next one. You can do that sequentially for each book in the series. If you are going to do that and don't have a Bible or don't have a Bible anyway and want to read through one and don't have access to one, we have Bibles that are totally free of charge. By the way, all of our resources are of no charge to you at all. We don't expect you to send in anything to us. But we have Bibles that are hardcover ESV translation Bibles. That's English Standard Version. That's a translation we typically use here on the program. And we have regular print and large print. If you're interested in receiving one of those and don't have a Bible or want to participate in the correspondence course, you can reach us by mail at the address on the screen. That'll be at the Marquette Church of Christ. We have a P.O. Box 372. That's going to be in Marquette, zip code 49855. You can find a lot of this information on letthebiblespeak.net. One of the things you'll also see on the website, you can go to letthebiblespeak.net. If you go to .com, that's actually a different program down south. But on letthebiblespeak.net, you have information about the program. There's also information about the local churches that are here in the UP. If you're not connected to a local church, I'd like to invite you and encourage you to be a part of one of the churches up here, if you're able to. I know that it's not always possible with distance because of driving. Maybe you're not able to easily get out of the house due to medical situation. But if you are able to connect with a local church, I'd really encourage you to do that. You know, right now, as we speak, this program is wrapping up around 10:30. A lot of these churches meet at 11 o'clock. Marquette Church of Christ, the Escanaba Church of Christ, we meet at 11 a.m. Feel free to join us for worship. Our services are open to everybody. You can also find all of these programs are recorded in form of a podcast that are published to Spotify and Podbean. You just have to search Let the Bible Speak UP, and you can find those programs there. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the program today. I hope it was beneficial and uplifting. I hope you have a wonderful week. May God bless you in all that you do.
The Father's glory blaze, Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Flow, river flow, flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord.